The sun burned white over the fields of Hope's End, a settlement clinging to the dusty edge of the frontier planet New Viridian. Daniel Shaw wiped sweat from his brow, guiding his plow through soil as dry as old bones. He was a man built for labor-calloused hands, shoulders broad from seasons of harvests that barely fed the town. Behind him, the rusted machine coughed and shuddered, metal teeth gnawing at the earth. Clunk. The plow jerked violently. Daniel killed the engine, silence crashing over the field. Kneeling, he dug with bare hands until his fingers brushed cold metal. What emerged made him sit back on his heels. A sword. Longer than his arm, black as void space and flawless despite the dirt. Silver veins snaked across its blade like frozen lightning. Curiosity warring with unease, Daniel carried it to Clara Bennett's workshop. Clara, the settlement's historian, kept relics of the first colony in glass cases, rusted gears, fractured data slates. Her eyes widened when she saw the sword. Prectolone, she breathed, cleaning grime from the blade. Older than anything here. As her cloth passed the hilt, letters flickered to life near the base glowing. Bone-white words. All enemies of the fallen warrior are now your foes. Clara recoiled. Cursed things whisper lies, Daniel. Bury it. But Daniel felt a pull low in his gut. The sword seemed to hum against his skin. He hung it on his barn wall that evening, dismissing Clara's warnings. Just metal, he told himself, though his reflection in the blade looked sharper, fiercer. Night fell hard on New Viridian. Wind howled through cracks in the barn, and Daniel dreamed. Not of home or lost reins, or Clara's worried face. He stood on a battlefield under bleeding stars. Armored figures clashed in silence, warriors in silver, warriors in black. One fighter rose above the rest, swinging a blade identical to Daniel's. His face was a blur, but his roar shook the ground. They come. Daniel woke, gasping. The barn was ice cold. The sword glowed faintly on the wall, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Shadows pooled thicker around it, whispering without sound. They come. He reached for the blade. The moment his fingers touched the hilt, a jolt shot up his arm, not pain, but power. Visions flashed, a fortress carved into a mountain, a woman in obsidian armor staring down at a burning world, soldiers marching under a banner of a clenched iron fist. Outside, the wind died. An unnatural quiet smothered the farm. Daniel crept to the barn door, sword in hand. The glow from the blade lit the yard in sickly silver. Dust stirred near the fence. Shapes moved in the dark, not wildlife. Armored, moving with purpose. Spread lenses glinted where eyes should be. Daniel's grip tightened on the sword. The inscription flared brighter, searing the words into his vision. All enemies of the fallen warrior are now your foes. The first soldier stepped into the moonlight, weapon raised. Queen Selena's crest-a-thorned crown was stamped on his breastplate. The sword's whisper filled Daniel's skull, clear as a shout. Now they are yours. Daniel Shaw stood frozen in the barn doorway, the strange sword heavy in his hand. The armored figures moved silently towards his farmhouse. Their black armor swallowed the moonlight, and the red lenses on their helmets glowed like evil eyes. Fear tightened Daniel's chest, cold and sharp. He thought of Clara Bennett, asleep in her small house nearby. A harsh voice cut through the quiet night. "Farmer, you possess property of the Iron Throne Dominion. Surrender it." The lead soldier stepped forward, his weapon a long rifle with a cruel spike, pointed at Daniel. The thorned crown symbol on his chest plate seemed to pulse. Daniel recognized it now. Queen Selena's mark. Stories whispered in Hope's End spoke of her enforcers taking whatever they wanted. Daniel didn't move. The sword felt warm against his palm, vibrating faintly. The glowing words on the blade, "All enemies of the fallen warrior are now your foes," seemed to burn brighter. He thought of the warrior in his dream, fighting against silver soldiers under bleeding stars. Were these soldiers the enemies? Were they his enemies now? "I don't know what you mean," Daniel called out, his voice rough. "This is just an old piece of metal I dug up."
Right.
Liar. The soldier spat. He gestured sharply. Two others broke away, heading straight for Daniel's small farmhouse. Daniel saw the glint of a metal canister in one soldier's hand. "Fuel. Durn it," the lead soldier ordered. "No," Daniel shouted, a surge of panic overriding his fear. He took a step forward, raising the sword instinctively. It was a clumsy movement, the weapon unfamiliar and too large. The lead soldier laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Fool. He raised his rifle. At that moment, the two soldiers threw their canisters against the farmhouse wall. Glass shattered. A second later, a small device sparked, igniting the fuel. Fire roared to life, hungry orange tongues licking up the dry wood. The light painted the soldiers in flickering shadows. Daniel watched his home begin to burn. Years of hard work, the little he owned. The only shelter he had against New Viridian's harshness. It was all turning to ash. A deep anger, hotter than the flames, surged through him. It wasn't just the house. It was the threat to Clara, the violation, the sheer arrogance of these men. He gripped the sword tighter. The warmth became heat, flowing up his arm, filling his chest. The vibration turned into a low hum he could feel in his bones. The barn behind him, where he'd hung the sword just hours before, suddenly felt exposed. Needed to protect it, protect Clara. He turned to run towards Clara's house, away from the burning farmhouse and the soldiers. But the lead soldier was faster. He fired. Daniel threw himself sideways. The energy blast seared past his shoulder, scorching the barn wall. The heat was intense. He scrambled backwards into the barn itself, tripping over a feed sack. The soldiers advanced towards the barn entrance, their weapons ready. The fire from the farmhouse reached the barn's outer wall. Flames began to crawl up the dry timber, smoke filling the air inside. Daniel coughed, his eyes stinging. He was trapped. The soldiers blocked the door. The fire was spreading fast behind him. He raised the sword again, pointing it shakily at the soldiers. The lead one stepped into the barn doorway, outlined by the firelight. Last chance, farmer. Give us the blade. The sword pulsed in Daniel's hand, felt alive. The heat wasn't just anger anymore. It felt like strength flowing into him. He remembered the warrior's roar in his dream. They come. They were here, and the sword had promised they were his foes. As the flames reached the spot on the wall where the sword had hung, something incredible happened. The fire touched the blade itself, where Daniel held it out. But the fire didn't burn it. It didn't even blacken the metal. The obsidian blade and its silver veins seemed to drink the firelight, glowing with an inner, deep red heat. The lead soldier hesitated, his red lenses fixed on the unharmed sword in the midst of the flames. Daniel felt a jolt, like lightning up his spine. Images flashed behind his eyes. Not just the battlefield, but a face. A man with fierce eyes and short-cropped hair. The warrior Eric. He saw Eric fighting soldiers in armor like this, saw him fall before a woman in dark armor, a cruel crown upon her head. Queen Selene. The knowledge hit Daniel like a physical blow. These soldiers served Selene. Arik had fought them. Arik had fallen. And the sword, the sword passed Eric's enemies to him. The heat from the sword wasn't just energy, it was purpose. It was rage. It was the fallen warrior's defiance. The lead soldier recovered, aiming his rifle. Kill him, take the blade. Daniel Shaw didn't think, he acted. Fueled by the fire, by the loss of his home, by the sudden, terrifying understanding of the sword's promise, he swung the heavy blade towards the soldier in the doorway. It wasn't a skilled strike, just a desperate, powerful arc. The sword hummed louder as it cut through the smoky air. A visible wave of force, shimmering like heat haze, erupted from the blade. It slammed into the lead soldier. The man didn't just stumble. He was thrown backwards out of the barn doorway as if hit by a speeding ground car. He crashed into the two soldiers behind him, sending them all sprawling into the fiery yard. Daniel stood amidst the burning barn, the sword blazing with captured firelight in his hand. Smoke stung his eyes, but his vision was clear. The fallen warrior's enemies were here, and now they were his. The sword's whisper echoed the dream, cold and certain in his mind. They come. And Daniel knew he had to run, not just from the fire, but from everything he knew. Clara. He had to find Clara. Smoke choked Daniel Shaw's lungs as he stumbled out of the burning barn. Heat pressed against his back. Clara Bennett's house stood dark and silent across the yard. Panic clawed at him. He had to get her out before the soldiers recovered. The strange sword, still warm in his grip, pulsed like a second heartbeat. He sprinted towards Clara's small home, the heavy blade awkward in his hand. Behind him, shouts rose over the crackle of the fire. The soldiers were getting up. "Clara," Daniel yelled, banging on her door. "Clara, wake up. Now." The door flew open. Clara stood there, wrapped in a robe, her face pale with sleep and shock as she saw the burning barn and farmhouse. "Daniel, what? No time?" He grabbed her arm, pulling her outside. "Soldiers Dominion, they want the sword. They burned everything." Her eyes widened in terror, then hardened with understanding. She didn't argue, just ran with him towards the fields behind her house. Away from the orange glow and the shouts growing louder, Daniel glanced back. 3 dark figures were regrouping, their red lenses searching the yard. One pointed towards them. They plunged into the tall, dry grasses beyond the settlement's edge. The darkness was thick, the only sounds their ragged breathing and the distant roar of the fire. Daniel pushed Clara ahead, trying to shield her body with his own. The sword felt heavier with every step, its glow a dangerous beacon in the dark. "Where are we going?" Clara gasped, stumbling over uneven ground. "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "Just away, far away." He remembered the warrior Eric's face from the vision, the fierce eyes, the defiance. His enemies are mine now, Daniel thought grimly. But what did that mean? How could a farmer fight Queen Selena's soldiers? They scrambled down a shallow ravine, seeking cover. Daniel risked another look back. Silhouettes moved at the top of the ridge, scanning the darkness. Red beams flickered from their helmets, sweeping the ground. Searchlights. "We need to hide the sword's light," Clara whispered urgently. Daniel tried to wrap his coat around the blade, but the glow seeped through the fabric. The pulsing light seemed tied to his own fear, beating faster as the soldiers drew nearer. Suddenly, one of the red beams swept down into the ravine, catching the edge of the glowing cloth. "There," a harsh voice shouted. Energy blasts sizzled through the air, striking the rocks above them. Chips of stone rained down. Daniel shoved Clara behind a large boulder. He crouched beside her, clutching the sword. Fear and anger warred inside him. The sword hummed louder, the heat intensifying, flooding him with a desperate energy. He wanted to strike back, to make them pay for his home, for the terror in Clara's eyes. He rose slightly, peering over the boulder. A soldier was carefully making his way down the slope towards them, rifle aimed, without thinking, fueled by pure panic and the sword's surge of power. Daniel swung the blade wildly in the soldier's direction. Just like in the barn, a shimmering wave of force shot out. But this time Daniel wasn't ready. The recoil was immense. The sword wrenched violently in his hands, the hilt growing scorching hot. He cried out, nearly dropping it as pain shot up his arms. Force wave slammed into the slope near the soldier, sending a shower of dirt and rocks cascading down, forcing the man back, but not hitting him directly. "What was that?" Clara breathed, staring at the disturbed earth. It does that," Daniel gasped, shaking his stinging hands. "But I can't control it." The sword's glow flickered erratically. The images returned, Arik fighting, not with wild swings, but with precise, controlled movements. He moved with the blade, not against it. Daniel understood. His fear and rage made the power unstable. More blasts hit the boulder. The other soldiers were descending now, flanking them. They were trapped. Suddenly a sharp whistle cut through the night air. It came from further down the ravine. A figure emerged from the shadows near the ravine wall. A man lean and weathered, dressed in worn, practical clothes. He held no visible weapon, but his eyes were sharp. "Hey, Dominion scum," the man yelled, his voice carrying clearly. Over here, the soldiers instantly turned, training their weapons on the newcomer. Daniel saw his chance. "Go," he hissed at Clara, pointing down the ravine away from the soldiers and the shouting man. They scrambled along the base of the rock wall, staying low. The soldiers fired towards the man. Instead of running, he ducked behind a rock outcrop. As Daniel and Clara ran past his position, he gave them a quick, assessing look, his gaze lingering on the glowing sword. "Keep moving," he barked. "Follow the ravine down, hurry." Daniel didn't hesitate. They ran, leaving the sounds of sporadic energy fire behind. After several frantic minutes, the ravine opened slightly. Parked under an overhang was a sturdy, modified ground truck. Standing beside it, tools in her hands and grease smudged on her face, was a young woman. She looked up as they approached, her eyes widening at the sight of the glowing sword. The man from the ravine appeared moments later, jogging towards them, barely winded. "Lost them for now," he said. He looked at Daniel, then at the sword. Name's Eli Grant. That he nodded at the blade. Is why Seleni's dogs are burning Hope's End? Daniel nodded, still breathing hard. They came for it. Burned my farm. Eli's expression turned grim. Tears. Selene hates reminders of Arik. He saw Daniel's surprise. Yeah, I know the name. The warrior who carried that blade, fought her ancestors. Died fighting. He spat on the ground. She wants all trace of him gone, especially that sword. He gestured to the young woman. This is Lena Rhodes. She keeps this old beast running. Lena gave a curt nod, her eyes fixed on the sword with intense curiosity. Clara stepped forward, her historian's mind clicking. The inscription. All enemies of the fallen warrior are now your foes. It bound them to Daniel. Eli met Daniel's eyes. Seems so. Welcome to the fight, farmer. Queen Selene just declared you enemy number 1. She doesn't forget her enemies. He glanced back the way they came. We need to move. They'll track us. Open the back of the truck. Get in. Let's see what that blade really does. The ground truck rumbled through the night, leaving the burning ruins of Hope's End far behind. Inside the cramped, dusty cargo area, Daniel Shaw sat hunched, the sword resting across his knees. Ow! Its faint glow illuminated the worried faces of Clara Bennett and the newcomers, Eli Grant and Lena Rhodes. Eli drove, his eyes constantly scanning the dark landscape through the front viewport. Selene doesn't just want the sword gone, Eli explained, his voice tight. She wants Arik forgotten. His rebellion scared her ancestors. His death wasn't enough. Erase his name, erase his fight. That sword is the last symbol. He glanced back at Daniel, and now it chose you. Daniel felt the weight of those words. Chose me. It just showed up. Lena, wiping grease from her hands with a rag, leaned closer, fascinated by the blade. It's more than metal. I saw the wave it made back in the ravine. It channels energy, kinetic force. She pointed a finger near the blade, not quite touching it. Feel it. It's humming, like it's connected to you. Yeah. Your fear, your anger, it feeds it, but it needs control. Daniel remembered the painful recoil, the burning hilt. How? Practice, Eli grunted. In purpose, you're not just swinging a tool, you're wielding Arik's will. He pulled the truck off the rough track, hiding it under a rocky outcrop near an abandoned mining settlement. We hole up here, rest. Think. Dawn painted the sky in pale colors. Daniel, exhausted but unable to sleep, walked outside. The sword felt restless in his grip. He raised it, trying to remember the smooth movements from his vision of Arik. He swung slowly, deliberately, focusing not on hitting something, but on moving with the blade. It hummed softly, a warm current flowing up his arm. This time, no violent force erupted, just a gentle ripple in the air. Start. Clara found him later, sitting by the rusted skeleton of a mining machine. She held a small, leather-bound book, its pages brittle. I found this in the truck storage, she said, her voice filled with awe. Eli must have salvaged it. It's Arik's journal. She opened it carefully. He writes about the sword. It doesn't just pass his enemies. It bonds to those who share his spirit. Defiance against tyranny. It draws strength from the wielder's courage. It's from the courage of those who stand with them. Hope sparked in Daniel, fragile but real. Strength from others? Before Clara could answer, the low thrum of engines filled the air. They looked up. 3 sleek Dominion skimmers descended from the clouds, hovering over the settlement like black insects. Loudspeakers crackled to life, echoing across the empty buildings. The voice was cold, female, dripping with absolute authority. Queen Selene. Daniel Shaw, the voice boomed. You harbor a relic of treason. You shelter enemies of the Iron Throne. You have until sunset to deliver the sword and surrender yourselves. Refuse. ... double quotes. The pause was heavy, threatening. In this settlement, and any who stand with you will be erased by fire from orbit. The choice is simple. Surrender or burn. The message repeated. Then the skimmers rose and sped away, leaving silence thick with dread. Daniel felt the fear return, cold and sharp, burned from orbit. There was no hiding. Clara gripped his arm. Daniel, ... Eli and Lena ran up, their faces grim. They found us fast, Lena muttered. They always do, Eli said, his jaw clenched. He looked at Daniel, then at the sword. Sunset. What do we do, Shaw? Run, hide, or stand? Daniel looked around the desolate settlement. He saw movement near the old mine entrance. Faces peered out. Scared, dirty faces. Fisher, the old water purifier from Hope's End. Gwen, who ran the grain store. Pete, barely 17. Others, survivors who had escaped the burning town and followed Eli's trail. They had nothing left but fear and the will to live.
At!
They looked at Daniel, at the glowing sword.
At!
Selena's threat echoed. Surrender or burn. Clara's discovery echoed. Strength from those who stand with you. He looked at Fisher's lined face, Gwen's determined eyes, Pete's trembling hands. He saw Clara's trust, Eli's hardened resolve, Lena's fierce curiosity. They were here, with him. Daniel Shaw took a deep breath. The fear didn't vanish, but something else rose beneath it. Something hotter. Something shared. He lifted the black sword high above his head. Its glow intensified. Not a beacon of fear now, but a signal. It's a challenge. Its light washed over the faces of the survivors, catching in their wide eyes. The low hum grew louder, steadier, resonating not just in Daniel's bones, but seeming to vibrate in the very air around them. We stand, Daniel said, his voice rough but strong, carrying across the silent settlement. It wasn't a shout, but a declaration. As he spoke the words, the sword pulsed. Once, twice, like a steady heartbeat waking up. The light flared brighter, bathing the dusty ground, and the faces of the people looking to him in its cool silver radiance. The fallen warrior's enemies were coming, but Daniel Shaw wasn't just a farmer anymore. He had people to fight for, and the sword, sensing the defiant courage blooming in the ruins, answered with a surge of power that felt ready to meet the fire from the sky. Sunset painted the sky blood red over the abandoned mining settlement. Daniel Shaw stood on the cracked landing pad, the black sword held firmly in both hands. Its glow was strong and steady now, a cool silver light pushing back the growing shadows. Behind him, pressed close together, stood the people of Hope's End. Fisher, Gwen, Pete, others whose names he barely knew. Clara Bennett stood near Eli Grant, her face pale but resolute. Lena Rhodes crouched beside a jury-rigged device, humming with wires connected to nothing yet. Queen Selena's ultimatum hung heavy in the air. Surrender or burn. There would be no surrender. A deep rumble shook the ground. High above, piercing the red clouds, a sleek, dagger-shaped warship appeared. It hovered like a vulture, its underside opening to reveal dark ports. Orbital guns, targeting the settlement. They're powering up, Lena shouted, her voice tight. Daniel felt the familiar surge from the sword, warmer this time. It wasn't just his own fear or anger. It felt like the collective heartbeat of the people behind him. Their terror, yes, but also their fierce, fragile hope. Clara's words echoed. Strength from those who stand with you. He planted his feet. He didn't look like a warrior. He looked like a farmer holding a strange, glowing tool. But his voice, when he spoke, carried across the silent pad. Lena, now? Lena slammed a switch on her device. Cables snaked out, their ends sparking. She thrust them towards the base of Daniel's sword. Touch them, she yelled. Daniel lowered the point of the blade. The sparking cables leaped the small gap, connecting with a sharp crackle. Instantly, the sword's glow exploded. It wasn't just light. It became a visible dome of shimmering silver energy, expanding rapidly outwards from Daniel. It flowed over the terrified people, over the rusted buildings, covering the entire settlement like a protective bubble. High above, the warship fired. Twin lances of blinding white energy screamed down from the sky. They struck the shimmering dome. The impact was deafening. The ground heaved. People cried out, stumbling. The dome flared blindingly bright where the beams hit, rippling like water struck by stones. But it held. The energy beams spattered against it, dissipating in showers of harmless sparks that rained down outside the shield. Inside the dome, the air crackled with the sword's power. Daniel felt the immense strain, like holding up a collapsing mountain. The sword vibrated violently, its heat intense. He gritted his teeth, pouring every ounce of his will, his connection to the people behind him, into holding the shield. Arik fought with you, the sword seemed to whisper. Now they fight with you. Suddenly, smaller ships, troop carriers, detached from the warships, screaming down towards the settlement. They landed just outside the shimmering dome. Ramps dropped, and squads of black-armored soldiers poured out, weapons ready. At their head, flanked by elite guards, strode Queen Selene. She wore polished obsidian armor, intricate and cruel. In her hand, she held not a gun, but a long, wicked-looking plasma scythe, its blade crackling with contained energy. Her face, visible through her open helmet, was sharp, beautiful, and utterly merciless. Her eyes fixed on Daniel and the glowing sword. The shield flickered. Maintaining it against the orbital guns while facing a ground assault was too much. Daniel felt the strain tearing at him. "Lena, disconnect," he gasped. Lena yanked the cables free. The shield dome vanished instantly. The warship above, seeing the shield down, began recharging its guns. They had minutes, maybe seconds. Queen Selene walked forward, her guard spreading out. She stopped just outside sword reach, her scythe held loosely. "The farmer," she said, her voice cold and clear. "You cling to a dead man's toy? Did his ghost teach you how to hold it?" She gestured dismissively at the cowering survivors. "Or do you draw courage from these? Insects?" Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between Selene and his people. The sword hummed, its point aimed at her. "Arik fought you. He died fighting you. His enemies are mine now. You burned my home. You threatened these people. You are my enemy." Selene laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Dead warriors win no wars, farmer." She moved with terrifying speed, her scythe a blur of crackling energy as she lunged, aiming to cut him down in one stroke. Daniel reacted not with trained skill, but with the sword's burning guidance and raw instinct. Each swung the black blade to meet the scythe. The collision was thunderous. Silver light met crackling plasma. A shockwave blasted outwards, knocking soldiers and survivors off their feet. Daniel staggered, the impact numbing his arms, but held his ground. Selena's eyes widened slightly in surprise. They clashed again and again, scythe against sword. Each strike sent shivers of force through the ground. Daniel felt the sword channeling not just his strength, but the defiant spirit of Fisher. Gwen, Pete, Clara, Eli, Lena, everyone behind him. Their shared will to survive, to fight back. The sword drank it in, its glow becoming incandescent. Selene fought with cold precision, but frustration began to show. Her strikes grew fiercer, wilder. "You are nothing." She snarled, bringing the scythe down in a brutal overhead chop. Daniel raised the sword, bracing. The blades met with a sound like a starship tearing apart. Light erupted, pure blinding silver from the sword, violent purple from the scythe. For a second, they were locked, straining. Then, with a screech of shattering energy, the plasma scythe exploded. Shards of superheated metal and energy flew outwards. Selene was thrown backwards, crashing to the ground, her armor scorched and smoking. Her weapon was destroyed, nothing but a shattered hilt in her hand. Her elite guards rushed forward, but Eli and Lena, along with Fisher and others wielding pipes and tools, moved to block them. Daniel stood amidst the fading light, the black sword still blazing brightly in his hands, unharmed. He walked slowly towards the fallen queen. Selene pushed herself up on one elbow, her hair singed, her face smudged with ash. She stared at the sword, then at Daniel, not with fear, but with a strange, grudging understanding. Her gaze swept over the ragged survivors now holding her stunned guards at bay. She looked back at Daniel, a bitter twist to her lips. "The sword chose well," she said, her voice hoarse, devoid of its former icy command. "Eric's ghost. It found more than just a farmer. It found a spark." She lowered her head, the fight gone out of her. Above, the warship's guns powered down. Without Celine's command, the attack was over. The remaining Dominion soldiers, seeing their queen defeated and weaponless, lowered their rifles. Daniel lowered the sword. Its fierce glow began to soften, fading to a gentle pulse. The heat receded, leaving only a warm weight in his hand. He looked at the survivors, at Clara's relieved face, at Eli's grim nod. The fallen warrior's enemies were countless. His legacy was one: hope. Daniel Shaw walked to the center of the landing pad. He reversed the sword and, with a final surge of the shared strength that had saved them, drove its point deep into the hard-packed earth. It stood upright, a simple dark monument against the darkening sky, its inscription faintly visible. "All enemies of the fallen warrior are now your foes." Its work was done.